Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am Friendship Pearson, and welcome again to my channel. It is April 4th of 2025, and I have 9:23 in the a.m. I pray everybody has a beautiful day in the Lord. I'll be trying to go live soon, okay? Soon. Working on a lot of things and getting things together. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for your response to the video that I did yesterday in regards to the subject of a man possibly stepping into the role of a stepdad. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. I began to read the comments and I had a reminiscent moment so deep that I just broke down. And then once I thought I was strong enough again to read again, I did, and I broke down again. And I went through that off and on all day yesterday after I did the video. And then this morning, again, I read some current comments, and I'm like, Pearson, your eyes gonna be red again, right? But they were touching. It's not a subject that is often talked about in enough detail. So what I want to do is touch on it again from another aspect, historically, and how the powers have warred against, literally, the powers. Satan has utilized people and organizations to war against the American family. You might not want to look at it that way, but I'm going to address it. It has to be addressed. It needs to be thought about. Because by and large, the things that we see, the things which we are bombarded with on a daily basis, and even the policies that are created by our government begin to separate us. And the war makes us opposites many times, as opposed to a collective. And your selection of your mate is harder because you're not really looking for certain aspects and certain traits and certain characteristics and certain values that a person should have even before they think about dating, let alone having a kid. I did receive some negative comments. I'm going to forgive those who said those because they didn't know. One person said, "Then you try being a stepfather, Pearson, and practice what you preach. You've never been a stepfather to see what one has to go through before passing judgment." Passing judgment is a very strong word. I wasn't passing judgment. I was simply saying that there is a unique group of men out here and people in general, because women, single women or women with kids, come into a relationship with a man and he has kids. These are people who have certain unique qualities and characteristics, and a spark turns into a flame and they make a go of it. So when a person said, "Pearson, you're not a stepdad," I kind of chuckled and I responded to a few, and I said, if you had listened carefully, you would have got the hint that that is what I am. I am a stepdad and have been a stepdad before in different times before I wind up getting married. I won't go into all the details. I don't like sharing all my aspects of my personal life. I don't want to put my son in this vicious social media, right? But I have stepped up And being a stepdad in a sense is got to be one of the most beautiful and rewarding things I've ever done. I chose to do that for a woman I was married to. And that's all I got to say about it. Now, there are other comments on here in relation to that video. I cannot read them. I would tear up and not finish this video. So, but there is one in particular I want to read. The bottom line is a person should date the person God has chosen for them. That person might already have kids. They might not. That person might have a job. They might not. No content creator can tell you what parameters to use when choosing your mate. Listen to God for that direction. He knows what is best for you. The other person and anyone else who might be blessed by your union. Thank you at Witty Mystic 7361. Thank you for that. That sums it up. Again, there were so many comments, and I'm sure there'll be more. And there were also those who had bad experiences from a stepdad or from a relationship in general. I understand. I've had my share of bad experiences. And a child can suffer and has suffered in many relationships, not only in America, but around the world, as two people decided to get together and there were children involved, and it became worse. We pray for those. My address regarding should a man take on the role of a stepfather, that is raising another man's children, it wasn't plural, it was singular. It's not for everybody. In fact, it could possibly be a calling, like the statement was made yesterday. You see, God has his unique way and timing and rhythm of putting key people in your life to make life a wonderful experience, all for his glory. God is a progression. He always wants his will, his love, his grace, his mercy, his voice to continue on the earth. So many times he pairs up people without them even knowing the fullness of why. But again, it's not for everybody. You see, we are made in God's image. However, over the generations, some of us inherit or are coded with certain traits and characteristics to do the service of a stepdad. Yes, you are coded. You have certain characteristics in your gene pool. That is another reason why I said it's not for everybody. Because certain characteristics and certain traits, they have to be developed and rise to a certain level. So when you meet that woman, you know you're ready to take on that responsibility. It's deep. The Almighty gives us the possibility to cherry pick those characteristics and traits: humility, meekness, loving, unselfish, healing, thoughtfulness. If you're not built like this, you're probably not cut out to be a stepdad. There's also a social and economic balance that one has to have, of course, in his relationships. And I'm not trying to be a Dr. Phil or Oprah. I'm just sharing things that I know. Money is a big factor in a relationship. The balance of education. Those are factors. A certain person's spending habits. You either inherit these things through your gene pool, or you inventory what you need to get better and allow yourself to be molded as such. Now, here's a twist I want to throw at you. There's a slavery aspect one must consider, especially for my people. A lot of slaves were broken psychologically, broken from the backside. You heard me. A lot of slaves were broken from the backside. When you had certain slaves that rebelled back in the day, certain slaves were brought in a circle and were humiliated sexually. Read between the lines. If you humiliate the toughest, the strongest, the one that rebelled against master, then you can control the slaves in general. So a lot of men back in the day were broken psychologically, broken from the backside, broken spiritually, broken to become studs by their masters to reproduce slaves, children for the plantation. Yes. And not only black men, a lot of slaves, master chose sometime the strongest slave to be a stud, to have relations with another slave woman so she could produce slave children for the master, for labor. Do you know that affects your DNA? That affects your characteristic? That affects your psyche? That even now, today, arguably, a man's promiscuousness, even a woman's, it could be in part from history, psychologically, that trait, and spiritually, that demon going from one generation to another. But you thinking you all that in a bag of chips because you got all these women. But you don't know that's a spirit that has followed you through the generations. We got to go historical sometime. Arguably, this promiscuousness began in certain regions of the earth from slavery. This helps shape many behaviors of men today, translated pimps and the H word. Now many don't know that blacks owned blacks as slaves back in the day as well, and traded us off the coastal shores. We were considered classless and property to be bidded upon, that is sold. The key to understanding your current society is to understand many times your past. The power is re-emphasized. This stud mentality through the movies like Superfly and other films where the black man was portrayed as being cool, having all the women, having all the cars, being irresponsible, slinging drugs, running the streets. I don't live too far from a migrant shelter. And so as I was walking late last night, I went out to get something to eat. I came across this brother. He was from another country, and he had his child a few steps in front of him. The child couldn't have been more than four years old. And this brother was as dark as me. But again, he was from another country. He literally cussed at his son in front of me as I was walking past him and his son, and told him, slow his blank down. And my mind went into shock, like, you got young brothers having babies, not ready to be fathers. And perhaps he never even had a dad, or not the best example of one. Either way, here we are. It hurt, because cussing at that child with that tone of voice, with that inflection in his voice as a man to a little boy, he doesn't know that he's shaping him. He's ingraining a behavior in that child that at some point, if it's consistent, that child will then repeat that, not only to another woman, but to society in general. So the power of Satan knows he had to get together with certain people on the planet, like allegedly in Hollywood, and create these movies for us to emulate so he could shred the family. The goal wasn't to build one. And unfortunately, a percentage of men gravitated toward this. They emulated this. When I read some of the negative comments, I couldn't help but think about how many men are and were so unloved, so neglected, so torn, so beaten down, so confused, so defensive, so divisive, so disrespectful, calling women's B's and H's, that even up to 20, 25 years ago, women then start calling women B's and H's. A societal breakdown. And you wonder why the divorce rate is so crazy. When you respect each other, you honor God. If you honor God, you're blessed. If you're blessed, the Holy Spirit can come in and move between that union to bless that union. But words are powerful, and people don't understand how powerful words are. But the folks who run the cinema, who run Hollywood, they know that God spoke everything into existence and said, as he blessed the world on the seventh day, he said everything is good. Satan knows the power of words. So he knows if he produces these movies and targets a certain segment of our culture, and then targets all of society, that there would then create a subculture, and then they put that out in the videos and in the movies, that we, a portion of us, would be paraded, pour out a little liquor and talk with eubonics and sag and have 3 or 4 women. And I watched a video a few weeks ago. This sister, she had a conviction to tell the truth about a lot of the men who were in the street, that they knew they wouldn't make it past 40 or 50 years old. So they deliberately wanted to impregnate a few women You heard me. I watched the video whereby a woman was spilling her guts, saying how she grew up in a neighborhood whereby the men knew they wouldn't make it past a certain age because they was in them streets. And they deliberately impregnated a few women because they wanted their seed to continue. That's sick. And so now, as a man, when you're looking for a woman, it's harder. I get it. Every woman, irregardless of her circumstance, ain't for you, bro. And when I say bro, of any color, of any culture. And the seed that came up out of her, that baby got characteristics. You might not want to deal with that. 90% of the men, they probably ain't built for that. And it's getting worse. I get it. But if God steps in and calls you to do that, then I got to go with what Brother DMX said. God won't take you to what God won't take you through. Come on. So unfortunately, a percentage of men gravitate toward this pimp mentality to emulate this. That's what we are. But men, a lot of us are torn. The women are torn. We've been beaten down, disrespected on both sides, male and female. And nobody wants to be a stepdad at that point. You know why Hollywood did that? Showed you all that? Because Hollywood understands, the Bible talks about the lust of the flesh. The powers understand the lust of the flesh. That flesh many times rules your behavior. And then you're going to go out here and have these bastard children. That's why they bombard you with the media. And so, in your narrow thinking, you're divisive. Why would I be there for that woman? I'm not going to respect her. She don't respect me. My defenses are up. She called herself a B. We wind up cycling and recycling that thing which has bombarded and rolled our mind, is what I'm saying. Never understanding that maybe you don't want to be a stepdad is because you're not patient enough to grow and develop the necessary characteristics and skills to acquire your queen. Translated, no matter what the media does, no matter what the cinema, the movies, and your environment puts out there, you got to put up this barrier. And let the Holy Spirit, if you're not saved, you got to draw from those positive things. Somebody in the neighborhood is a good example. There's a book or a magazine somewhere that you can make that better decision. Then grow those characteristics. Then God might choose you to be a stepdad, is what I'm saying. Because it ain't for everybody. I get it. And again, it's getting harder. And Satan made it worse. Brother, I say this in the spirit of love. It's easy to criticize the problem of society and a broken woman in which some made bad choices. It's another thing to identify what her need is, what her environment is, and groom yourself for her. You see, God gave man dominion, so he holds the power to move the atmosphere by his conduct. And I'm not dismissing that she has a big role in developing herself. I'm not saying she wasn't wrong with her bad decisions. What I'm saying is that Develop yourself with great characteristics so you can change this earth. And you can speak to these gangster rappers and everything else by your characteristics. Men, we hold the power to move the atmosphere and conduct because God gave us dominion. If you don't want to be a stepdad, don't talk a possibly God-sent man out of his calling. You do and respect his decision. Calling him a simp. What is a simp? Someone please get me an updated Ebonics dictionary, because I don't know what a simp is. No woman is ruling me. We're not handpicked. We're not begging her. We're not disrespected. We're not desperate and do anything to have her or to maintain peace. We look for certain qualities in a woman: mannerisms, actions, poise, and a God-centered value. Reflect a beauty that you critics sorely miss and probably would never experience. You see, when you rise to that God level in seeking a woman, you get your goddess. Once the powers exploited the black community with these pimp movies, they simultaneously filled our streets with guns, gangs, and drugs. They pushed the gangs on all the cultures after that, in all the neighborhoods, especially in Chicago. And they pushed the rap culture. Okay? They went to work on the culture. And then they gave us movies like the John Travolta movie. So now you had white boys out there allegedly looking like the pimp and the guy with all the women's. Remember Staying Alive movie? I think that's the name of the movie with John Travolta. So now white boys are cool. Latino boys are cool. You got game. But I'm a simp. Make that make sense. Just want to give you guys a little history. That subculture that America presented is now the cancer that it has destroyed a lot of communities. Then we got black leaders who rose to prominence. And we had black leaders who rose to prominence and were taken out by the powers because they threatened the powers' agenda. And many civil rights leaders became poverty pimps. Some even became politicians. Then they formed the Boule and other controlled black groups. That way black folks became uppity black folks. These cream of the crop, quote unquote, blacks who went to certain colleges, joined certain clubs, etc., while others got TV shows and prominence through sports and entertainment. Yet not a measurable proportion did anything for black kids. I always quote Dr. Claude Anderson that black folks since the Civil War collectively, economically, have only grown 0.5% since the Civil War. Major black people in America have been controlled. Even though you're an athlete and got millions of dollars, you are not doing enough for the black community. Enough of them are not doing it because they're controlled. And they know it and they're not going to tell you. They're keeping a secret. The black entertainers the same way. They're controlled. They could have wiped out this ignorance and this poverty and all this crazy behavior a long time ago. But it would be diametrically opposed to the people that they work for, allegedly. It's deep. We've been warred against. There's a war on the family. And then you got Bill Clinton apologizing for the Tuskegee experiment. Hello, Google it, and what he did to us. And that's only one thing that they allegedly, admitted that they did to us. Did they do some other things to us? The Tuskegee experiment? And did they do those experiments to other cultures as well? Black, Mexican? Who knows? Is it in the food? Is it in the drink? Who knows? Wonder why your behavior is off the chain sometime? With your woman, or your woman with your man, or your baby's coming out crazy? We've been warred against in a lot of aspects. But yet you want to criticize me. You should be thanking me or any other man out here of any flavor for recognizing, understanding the history, and coming to the aid of the family, God's family, in the midst of all this hell. Again, American families were targeted. We were warred upon. You should applaud a man because he's relating to a woman who generally has come through a storm. When you boil down to it, she gave birth to love. When many of us never understood, we've all been neglected by it.